Phil, nice to meet you.
Good to see you.
Are you having an insane week at CES, or have you been enjoying it, or what's going on?
It's always crazy at CES.
Yeah.
You hope to see something new and exciting, but yeah, it's good from the standpoint that what we talked about 2 or 3 years ago is really this year is showing as becoming real, something you can actually get your hands on and actually buy.
So another thing which is interesting is the level of consolidation which has been happening in the cable industry. Does that change your mission at CableLabs at all? And is there a concern on your part that some of the new, ever larger players in the cable space may just end up doing the R&D for themselves?
Well, our largest members already have significant R&D facilities. We don't see it as any change in our mission per se. 3 years ago when I took over as CEO, CableLabs, we were funded by about 26 members, 6 countries. Today we're 57 members in 33 countries.
That's fantastic.
So we've spent really the last 3 years really building out the international expansion. So we now have all of Europe, Asia. We have 5 of the largest cable operators in China, Japan, in Taiwan, Indonesia, Singapore. We work with the government regulators around the world. So for us, it's really about bringing the global industry together, and there's always dynamics occurring on any one geography or one region. India, for instance, is on the verge of a massive consolidation of their cable operators.
Right.
China's already gone through that consolidation, and you're seeing just this absolute explosion in broadband services, being made available into China. Japan, great penetration, but new 4K and now 8K is coming, is broadcast 8K in Japan. So for us, it's that diversity and that ability to work on a global scale that's really positioned us well.
The geo penetration is really the biggest change then, is it, over the last couple of years?
For us, it's been really the global penetration piece for us. It's also about expanding what we do on behalf of the members. It's not just the traditional R&D, just around high-speed data over HFC plant, the DOCSIS technologies, albeit we just wrapped up DOCSIS 3.1. It's now rolling out commercially. But also we've positioned ourselves a little bit differently in the fact that we now have a mechanism to take technologies that we develop in CableLabs and make it available to the non-cable industry. So we've set up, July of 12, we launched Network FX, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of CableLabs that allows us as a for-profit to bring those technologies outside. CableLabs is a tax-exempt nonprofit, which restricts what we can do. Through Network FX, we now make those technologies available to other industries. So for example, our PKI security business, we now issue the keys to the smart grid industry. Right. So smart meters on the side of your houses, we're providing the security models for those.
Right. So Phil, actually you mentioned DOCSIS 3.1, and that is a really important specification for a lot of Light Readings readers. When do you expect the first products to be certified or approved? And is there a pipeline of product waiting for certification?
Well, we've said we already have certification open. We have devices in for certification. We don't predict when those devices will complete certification. We don't make announcements on behalf of the vendor community. Over the holidays, though, Comcast did announce that they've installed a DOCSIS 3.1 modem running DOCSIS 3.1 in their first house. So they're actually delivering 3.1 services over the network today. And what you'll see is throughout 2016, you'll see that ramp up significantly. Comcast is probably the lead here in the U.S., but we've got a couple of our bigger members in Asia, and a couple of bigger members in Europe are right on their heels as far as getting 3.1 deployed.
SCTE has been making some noises about getting into cable testing, cable technology testing. Do you care? I mean, at what point do you kind of draw a line between the two organizations?
Oh, no. I mean, SCTE and CableLabs, we have a great relationship. What they're focused on is the testing of those systems for the field engineers, field deployment. So everything from cable to connectors, that's an area we don't get involved in.
So there's not a lot of overlap in the Venn diagram?
In fact, at SCTE, they now have a visiting engineer fully located at CableLabs full-time. SCTE just announced a new CTO that they just brought in from Comcast. Mark Zuban and I get together on a pretty regular basis. And we've been actually, we led the international expansion, and we've been actually helping SCTE have a more meaningful impact on the global basis, not just in North America.
Yeah. Now, your organization's been getting involved in open source efforts, including OPNFV. How is that going, and how is it impacting the work that you're doing, and do you think it's going to have a real effect on the cable industry?
Oh, I think the overall open source strategy is critical for any industry, whether it's cable or anybody. It allows you really to move at a pace that's going to be required to stay competitive in the marketplace. We do a variety of both open source contributions. We also host, in some cases, some open source projects at CableLabs. And actually, we're being asked to even take on more open source contribution management, particularly from the vendor community, where the vendors are very comfortable working with CableLabs on things like DOCSIS, for us to play even a broader role in the open source elements that have an impact on the industry.
Are you concerned about some of the criticism of the open source process being politicized or being overly influenced by specific vendors who are involved in it? It seems like some people are starting to ask, how open is open really?
Well, you always run the risk of people trying to dominate the space. I think the key there is you have to have a third-party arbitrator who's looking at it purely from the best technology, not for the politics or market share or market penetration piece. And that's really the role that CableLabs can play from that standpoint. We've got 29-year history of looking purely at the science. We don't get pulled into lobbying. We don't get pulled into spin and marketing. We don't build products. We have a phenomenal relationship with the more than 200 vendors that are contributors to CableLabs, in addition to the member organizations now on a global basis. And we have government regulators around the world who come and have us do specialized testing just for the regulators. So the regulators trust us.
So you can be a trusted, independent ombudsman. I think that's what the industry really needs right now, actually.
We work very hard at maintaining that honesty and integrity. We don't compromise. If something's bad, bad. If it's good, good. We look at it from the pure science, the pure technical perspective.
Well, Light Reading is helping to launch this not-for-profit new IP agency, which is doing a lot of NFV interoperability testing right now, which was identified last year by Light Reading as the #1 concern amongst a lot of service providers. Would love to pursue a conversation with CableLabs about that. I mean, we would love to tap into your testing experience and advice on that. So,
well, we get asked by a number of industry groups to take advantage of our expertise in doing things like interops and specification. We've been involved with the Center for Medical Interoperability. So that's gotten $40 million of funding that they've raised from the West family. They're being established in Nashville. They basically are becoming the CableLabs for healthcare, where the members are the hospital groups and the vendors are the manufacturers of medical devices like IV pumps and EKG machines. In the medical industry, they don't interoperate. There's no standardized interfaces. There's none of those elements. So we've been working with them for 3 years to help them get stood up, and they've just now getting ready to launch here. And we see the model that CableLabs is doing in the cable industry to be able to proliferate across all kinds of industry.
Another hot technology here at CES, actually for a couple of years, is virtual reality. You've been doing some work in that area, is that right? Where's it going, and what's the end game there as far as virtual reality goes? And how far have you gotten?
For us, the virtual reality is we're looking at it from a standpoint of what is that next gen kind of media experience. What are the people going to do sitting on their couch 2, 3, 4 years from now? Our interest was really to say what kind of those experiences are going to require very big pipes coming into the house. We started our work about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And this year at the show, we saw a lot of VR and augmented reality also. But we're beyond the goggles. The big challenge now is the ability to create compelling content. We're seeing the sports piece. I put a 360 camera in the shotgun seat of NASCAR on the 50-yard line of the Super Bowl. That's great, but I spent yesterday talking to some experts and people who work at the movie studios, and they're looking at 360 content, but they're challenged because, for instance, if they want to shoot a drama in 360 content, you can't have lights. Because in 360 content, the camera sees everything. So if the person watching the drama looks up and all of a sudden sees the lights hanging down, it kind of blows the experience.
Sure.
So it changes the whole concept of everything in the technology, including what kind of camera do you use, what kind of everything. And
what's the impact on the network?
For us, even with, today's virtual reality, most anybody's network today is handled without any problem from a consumer perspective. You don't need much more than, 8, 10, 12 meg to do VR today streaming. Our view, though, in our testing, though, is we've got to drive a much higher resolution. So today, the resolution is it's basically a 4K TV, but it's wrapped, so the entire image space is 4K.
Right.
Our argument is the 4K needs to be in what we call the viewing space. Now, you start driving that kind, so I've got 4K here, 4K here, 4K here. That's a lot of pixels you're moving. In that case, you're probably talking, on the 100 megabits, 120 megabits kind of range of performance. Still well within today's DOCSIS 3.0 networks.
Yeah.
But now I'll do that. Okay, you do it as a novelty. It becomes really compelling interest, and now you've got your spouse, and a couple of kids, and all of you are watching different shows simultaneously.
Oh, yeah.
Now you're starting to see some real speed issues in the network.
Yeah,
and that's, for us, it's really trying to understand what the demands on the network are going to be. So as we think about 3.1 going out there, which will take you up to 10 megabits, what comes after 3.1? And we've already begun that work.
Do you feel like CableLabs is going to be renamed Network Labs or Communications Labs or Next Gen Labs at some point? Because you're not just about cable anymore, are you?
Yeah, we're not. We're, cable, and what's quite funny is when you ask people what's the real name of CableLabs, people don't know. It's actually Cable Television Laboratories, Inc. is the name of it. We go by CableLabs. Do we do a name change? It's been tossed about. It's been joked about. It's been, and look, even our members in Europe, they don't call themselves cable operators.
No.
Our largest operator in Spain calls themselves the fiber provider in Spain, and they actually have more fiber than even the incumbent in Spain.
Yeah.
I think cable kind of, you get a little bit of the baggage with it, but people know us by that name, and nothing in the
it's dangerous to change a brand.
Nothing in the immediate near term.
And the cable industry itself has been through something of a renaissance recently, hasn't it? Really, because over the last few years, I think, it's done well, hasn't it, in terms of upgrading the technology and reinventing itself in new ways.
Well, I think the fact that cable is the leading provider for consumer broadband services. Big expansion in serving business customers, growing into and now going and serving enterprise customers, both not only with traditional cable properties or products, but fiber, cell tower backhauls, a big business, the Wi-Fi footprint. More and more of our cable operators are either acquiring spectrum or acquiring wireless providers, such as Shaw with Wind, being the fourth cellular operator of Canada. The industry is in constant flux. And I'll tell you, being on the inside, it's as exciting as anything I've done previously in my career.
I agree with you. We're big cable fans, and it's great to meet you and to hear about what CableLabs is doing. You're obviously going in many different directions at once, but all of them are destined for success by the sound of it. I hope we get a chance to talk again, Phil, and to do some work together.
We're great. Look forward to it.
Cheers.
Great.
Nice
Thanks.
to meet you.